The judge laughed at the beginner lawyer, but he turned the impossible case around. Jonathan Miller felt sweat trickling down his palms as he arranged the papers on the dark wooden table in the courthouse. At 32, this would be his first solo defense, without the supervision of the firm where he had worked as an assistant for 5 years. The case had seemed impossible from the start. That's when Judge Stanley Thompson entered the room, his black robe contrasting with his completely white hair. The 68-year-old magistrate was known for being ruthless with inexperienced lawyers. When he saw Jonathan, an ironic smile crossed his face. "Mr. Miller, isn't it?" the judge said, adjusting his glasses. "I see here you intend to represent Mrs. Margaret Wilson in a custody case, a 71-year-old woman wanting to keep an 8-year-old child." Jonathan swallowed hard. In the front row, Mrs. Wilson clutched her worn leather purse tightly, her brown eyes fixed on the grandson she loved so much. The girl Emma was with her father in another room, barred from attending the initial hearings. "That's correct, Your Honor. I believe that—" "Believe what?" the judge interrupted with a laugh that echoed through the packed courtroom. "You must have just graduated and want to take on an impossible case. This woman has neither the financial means nor the appropriate age to raise a child." The opposing lawyer, Mr. Richard Edwards, smiled smugly from across the room. At 55, he was known for never losing a custody case, especially when representing wealthy clients like Stephen Wilson, Mrs. Wilson's former son-in-law. Jonathan felt his words jumble in his throat. The papers trembled in his hands as he tried to respond, and some documents fell to the floor. The murmurs in the gallery grew louder, and he realized everyone was watching him with a mix of pity and disdain. I'd like to present the defense's arguments, Your Honor," he managed to say, crouching to pick up the scattered papers. "Please make it quick. We don't have all day to waste," the judge replied, tapping his pen impatiently on the table. During the recess, Jonathan found Mrs. Wilson crying in the hallway. The gray-haired woman, her hair tied in a simple bun, wiped her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "Mr. Miller, I know you're trying to help me, but maybe it's better to give up. I don't want you to suffer more humiliation because of me," she said, her voice trembling. "Mrs. Wilson, I promise I won't give up. Emma needs you, and you deserve to be with her, no matter what that judge said." Jonathan held her hands, feeling how cold and shaky they were. It was then that Doris Clark, a courthouse employee who had worked there for over 30 years, discreetly approached. The 64-year-old woman knew every secret of that building. "Mr. Miller," she whispered, handing him a manila envelope. "Maybe this can help you, but be discreet. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now back to the story. Inside the envelope, Jonathan found copies of Judge Thompson's past rulings in similar cases. Every case involving grandparents fighting for custody had the same outcome: denied. The verdicts used nearly identical wording, as if they were based on a template. That night, Jonathan stayed in his small apartment in Freedom Heights, studying every line of those documents. His secretary, Ms. Gladys, a 67-year-old woman who had worked decades in the county courthouse before retiring, brought him coffee and a sweet roll. "Jonathan, my son, let me tell you something few people know," she said, pouring coffee into white porcelain cups. Judge Stanley had a very sad story with his own grandparents when he was a boy. Jonathan stopped reading and looked at Ms. Gladys attentively. "What do you mean, Ms. Gladys?" "His parents passed away when he was about 10 years old. His paternal grandparents wanted to take him in, but his mother's family won custody in court. The thing is, his maternal uncles didn't take proper care of him. He grew up feeling rejected, abandoned. Maybe that's why he never grants custody to grandparents." The next morning, Jonathan arrived at the courthouse with a completely different strategy. Instead of focusing solely on legal matters, he had decided to address the emotional aspect of the case. "Your Honor, I'd like to call the first witness," Jonathan said, his voice firmer now. "Proceed," replied the judge, still with an air of weariness. "I call Mrs. Mary Johnson, Mrs. Wilson's neighbor of over 15 years." A woman around 60 years old approached the witness stand. Mary was a retired teacher and lived next door to Mrs. Wilson in Washington Heights. "Mrs. Johnson, How would you describe the relationship between Mrs. Wilson and her granddaughter Emma? Mr. Miller, I see them every day. Emma calls Mrs. Wilson Grandma Maggie, and it's the sweetest thing to see. Every afternoon after school, the girl runs to her grandmother's house to do her homework. Mrs. Wilson has endless patience. She teaches with so much love. Objection, interrupted Mr. Edwards. Irrelevant to the issue of legal capacity for custody. Sustained, the judge said quickly. Jonathan took a deep breath. He knew he needed to change his approach. Mrs. Johnson, during the 2 years Emma lived with her father after her mother's passing, did you notice any change in the child's behavior? Oh, Mr. Miller, it was heartbreaking. The girl became so quiet. She didn't play in the yard like before. Many times I saw her crying by the window, looking over at her grandmother's house. When her father wasn't around, she'd sneak out to be with Mrs. Wilson. Stephen Wilson, Mrs. Wilson's former son-in-law, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The 45-year-old man had remarried just 6 months after losing his wife, and his new partner made it clear she didn't want the responsibility of raising Emma. And how would you assess Mrs. Wilson's financial situation? Mr. Edwards asked during cross-examination. She lives on her pension, but Emma never lacked for anything. Food on the table, clean clothes, affection. What more does a child need? A quality education, health insurance, extracurricular activities, the lawyer countered. Things my client can provide that a retiree simply can't. After the testimony, the judge called for a recess. Jonathan took the opportunity to speak with Mrs. Wilson in the hallway. How are you holding up seeing all this? Mr. Miller, I raised 5 children alone after my husband left us. Rachel, Emma's mother, was the youngest. I know I don't have money, but I have more than enough love. Doesn't that count for anything? Jonathan held her hand, feeling the weight of responsibility. This wasn't just a legal case, it was a child's future and a grandmother's heart. When the session resumed, Jonathan made a bold move. Your Honor, I request that the minor Emma be heard by the court. Denied. The child is too young to be exposed to this situation, the judge replied immediately. But Your Honor, the Child Protection Act guarantees— Mr. Miller, I know the law better than you. Request denied. Just then, something unexpected happened. The courtroom door swung open abruptly, and Emma came running in, followed by a frantic social worker. Grandma Maggie, shouted the girl, running toward Mrs. Wilson. Emma, my dear granddaughter, said the grandmother, opening her arms to embrace the child. Remove the child from the courtroom immediately, ordered the judge, banging his gavel. No, cried Emma, clinging to her grandmother. I want to stay with Grandma Maggie. Daddy doesn't play with me and the new aunt doesn't like me. Jonathan saw an opportunity and quickly stood up. Your Honor, I ask you to consider the child's right to be heard. Article 28 of the CPA is clear on this matter. Daddy said he'll send me away if I talk to Grandma, continued Emma, tears in her eyes. But I don't want to leave. I want to stay here with Grandma, eating sweet rolls in the morning and listening to stories before bed. The courthouse fell silent. Even the judge seemed moved by the child's words. Emma, come here, said Stephen, his voice tense. You shouldn't be saying these things. Your Honor, Jonathan interjected, I ask that the child be allowed to stay. Her presence may clarify key points for your decision. The judge hesitated for a moment, looking at the girl still clinging to her grandmother. The child may stay, but she will be heard in my chambers, only in the presence of the attorneys. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the judge's chambers, Emma sat on a tall chair, swinging her little legs. The setting was less formal, with law books on the shelves and a family photo of the judge on the desk. Emma, do you understand why we're here? Asked the judge, trying to soften his tone. Because Daddy wants me to live with him, but I want to live with Grandma Maggie, the girl replied with the honesty typical of children. And why do you want to live with your grandmother? Because she really loves me. When I'm sad, she makes hot chocolate and tells me stories about Mommy when she was little. Daddy is always working or going out with Aunt Jennifer. Jonathan noticed the judge's fists tightening slightly at the answer. Emma, your grandmother is quite elderly. Aren't you afraid she won't be able to take care of you? Grandma Maggie isn't old, the girl protested. She runs with me in the park, helps me with homework, and makes the best coconut fudge in the whole world. But what if you need things that cost a lot of money? Emma thought for a moment, her finger on her chin. Grandma always says the most important things can't be bought at the mall. It's the love, the hugs when you're scared, the comfort when you cry. Grandma has plenty of those. Mr. Edwards tried to intervene, but the judge silenced him with a gesture. Emma, you know your father can give you many nice things, right? Toys, pretty clothes, a private school. But he can't give me what I want most, said the girl, her eyes shining. And what do you want most? For someone to love me the way Mummy did, and only Grandma Maggie does that now. When they returned to the main courtroom, the judge seemed different. There was something in his eyes Jonathan couldn't quite decipher. Mr. Edwards, you may call your next witness, said the judge. I call Dr. Martin Campbell, child psychiatrist. A middle-aged man approached the witness stand. Jonathan had never seen this professional before and was surprised by how quickly he'd been summoned. Dr. Campbell, have you had the opportunity to evaluate the minor Emma Wilson? Yes, I conducted a detailed evaluation last week. And what is your professional conclusion? The child shows signs of separation anxiety and excessive emotional dependence on her grandmother. I believe it would benefit her development to remain with her father in a more structured environment. Jonathan felt his blood boil. That evaluation had been conducted without the defense's knowledge, which was highly irregular. Your Honor, I was not informed about this evaluation. I would like to question its validity. Mr. Miller, the petitioner has the right to present their evidence, the judge interrupted. During the questioning, Jonathan discovered the evaluation had lasted only 1 hour and was conducted in the presence of Stephen Wilson. Dr. Campbell, how many sessions did you have with Emma? 1 session was sufficient for my assessment. A session of how long? Approximately 50 minutes. And do you consider that adequate time to evaluate the emotional state of an 8-year-old child who lost her mother 2 years ago? The psychiatrist hesitated before answering. In urgent cases, an initial assessment may suffice. Dr. Campbell, are you familiar with the child's living conditions at her grandmother's home? I relied on the information provided by the father. So you've never been to Mrs. Wilson's home, never observed the interaction between grandmother and granddaughter in their natural environment? No, but... Thank you, doctor. No further questions. After the testimony, Jonathan requested a private word with the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to request a second psychological opinion, this time with a professional chosen by the defense. Mr. Miller, I cannot allow unnecessary delays in this case. Your Honor, with all due respect, we're deciding a child's future. Don't you think it's worth taking the necessary time to make the right decision? The judge fell silent for a few seconds, staring at the papers before him. Very well, but I want the evaluation ready in a week. That afternoon, Jonathan sought out Dr. Catherine Bennett, a child psychologist with over 20 years of experience. The 58-year-old professional was known for her careful and compassionate approach. Mr. Miller, I should mention I'll need at least 3 sessions with the child, as well as visits to both households, Dr. Bennett explained. Of course, doctor. I only ask that you remain impartial in your assessment. I always am. The child's well-being is my only concern. Meanwhile, Mrs. Wilson faced her own struggles. Stephen had cut off Emma's visits, claiming they interfered with the process. The grandmother spent her days by the window, waiting to see her granddaughter coming home from school. Ms. Gladys, I don't know what to do anymore, Mrs. Wilson confided during a visit from her former secretary. It's been 5 days since I've seen my Emma. Am I being selfish? Maybe she really would have a better life with her father. Conceição, Margaret. You know that girl better than anyone. What does your heart tell you? My heart says she needs me as much as I need her. But what if I'm wrong? What if I can't give her everything she deserves? You've already given her the most important thing, real love. The rest we'll figure out as we go. During Dr. Bennett's evaluations, Emma showed clear signs of depression when asked about the possibility of not seeing her grandmother again. Emma, can you draw me a picture of your family? The psychologist asked during the second session. The girl took the colored pencils and began drawing. On the paper appeared two figures, a short woman with grey hair and a little girl holding hands. Around them, hearts and colourful flowers. "And your daddy?" Dr. Bennett asked. "Daddy's always at work," Emma replied without looking up. "Could you draw him too?" Emma hesitated, then drew a very small male figure in the corner of the paper, far from the other two. When Dr. Bennett visited Mrs. Wilson's home, she was struck by its warmth. Though modest, the house was impeccably clean and organized. In the room that would be Emma's, there was a bed with a handmade patchwork quilt, shelves filled with children's books and toys neatly arranged with care. "Mrs. Wilson, how did you prepare to welcome Emma?" "Doctor, this room belonged to my daughter Rachel. When she got married, I kept everything just as it was, waiting for the day I'd have a little granddaughter to share these moments with me. When Emma was born, it was like the room came back to life." The psychologist noticed photographs scattered around the house, capturing happy moments between grandmother and granddaughter, birthdays, park outings, afternoons spent baking. "Do you have any plans for Emma's future if you're granted custody?" "Doctor, I know I can't give her everything money can buy, but I can give her attention, love and values. I can teach her to cook like I taught my daughter, I can share our family stories, and I can be there for every important moment in her life." At Stephen Wilson's home, Dr. Bennett encountered a completely different environment. The mansion in Beverly Hills was luxurious but cold. Emma had a huge bedroom filled with expensive toys, yet she was visibly withdrawn. "Emma spends a lot of time alone," explained Jennifer, Stephen's new wife. "We have a nanny who takes care of her when we get home from work. And what's her routine like here? Well, she goes to a very good private school, takes English and swimming lessons. Stephen wants the best for her. Do you have time for family activities?" Jennifer hesitated before answering. "Stephen works a lot, and I have my career too. But Emma has everything she needs here." During the visit, Dr. Bennett noticed that Emma stayed close to the nanny, a 50-year-old woman named Barbara, who clearly had genuine affection for the girl. "Barbara, how would you describe Emma's behavior since she's been living here?" "Doctor, the girl is very sad. Every night she asks when she'll see Grandma Maggie again. Sometimes I find her crying in the bathroom." "And what's her relationship like with her father and stepmother?" "Mr. Wilson is a good man, but he's always busy. Ms. Jennifer, well, she tries, but it's clear she doesn't have a way with children. Sometimes she gets irritated when Emma makes noise or makes a mess." When Dr. Bennett finalized her report, the conclusions were very different from the first evaluation. Emma showed signs of depression and anxiety when separated from her grandmother, but displayed joy and emotional security in Mrs. Wilson's presence. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, at the next hearing, Jonathan was more confident. He had spent the week studying case law and preparing his arguments. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Dr. Catherine Bennett's report," said Jonathan, handing the document to the judge. "Mr. Edwards, do you wish to respond?" asked the judge. "Your Honor, I challenge the validity of this second evaluation. My client has already submitted a conclusive technical report." "Mr. Edwards, both reports will be considered." "Dr. Bennett, may you present your findings?" The psychologist approached the witness stand with a confident and professional demeanor. "After 3 sessions with the child and visits to both households, I can confirm that Emma has much stronger emotional bonds with her maternal grandmother. In Mrs. Wilson's presence, the child displays happiness, spontaneity, and emotional security." "And what about the material conditions provided by the father?" asked Mr. Edwards. "Material conditions are important, but they aren't decisive for a child's emotional well-being. Emma's basic needs are met at her grandmother's home, and she receives undivided attention and genuine affection." "Dr. Bennett," Jonathan interrupted, "in your professional opinion, what would be in the child's best interest?" "To remain in her grandmother's care, with regular visitation rights for the father. Emma needs emotional stability, and she finds that in the nurturing environment Mrs. Wilson has provided her entire life." After the testimony, the judge called another recess. Jonathan ran into Stephen Wilson in the hallway, visibly angry. Mr. Miller, let's talk like civilized men, Stephen said, his tone barely concealing a threat. I can make you an interesting offer to drop this case. What do you mean, Mr. Wilson? $50,000. That's more than you probably make in a whole year defending lost causes like this one. Jonathan felt indignation rise in his chest, but kept his composure. Mr. Wilson, I'm not defending a case. I'm defending a child and a family. My professional ethics aren't for sale. Everyone has a price, counselor. $100,000 final offer. My answer is no. Stephen stepped closer, lowering his voice. Be careful, Mr. Miller. There are ways to ruin a young lawyer's career. A word in the right ear, an anonymous complaint. You understand. I understand perfectly. And I also understand that what you just did is called attempted bribery and coercion. I suggest you reconsider your actions. That night, Jonathan received an unexpected call from Ms. Gladys. Jonathan, my dear, I need to tell you something important. Remember when I mentioned Judge Thompson's past? Yes, Ms. Gladys. Well, I found out more details. I spoke with a colleague who worked at the county courthouse longer than I did. Judge Thompson was raised by his uncle and aunt because he lost his parents very young, but his grandparents fought in court to keep him. What happened? The judge, at the time, granted custody to the uncle and aunt, claiming the grandparents were too old and didn't have the financial means. But the relatives mistreated the boy. He grew up without affection, without care. Jonathan felt a chill. The story had striking parallels to the case he was defending. Ms. Gladys, are you sure about this? I am, dear, and there's more. Judge Thompson never married, never had children. They say he lives alone, bitter. Maybe that's why he's so harsh in cases like Mrs. Wilson's. The next morning, Jonathan arrived at the courthouse with a risky strategy. During his closing argument, he decided to appeal not just to the law, but to the judge's humanity. Your Honor, over these days in court, I've come to know a family that, despite financial struggles, has something money can't buy. Genuine love. The judge listened silently, but Jonathan noticed something different in his eyes. Mrs. Wilson isn't just a grandmother. She's the continuation of Emma's story, the bridge between the child and the memory of her late mother. She's the one who knows her fears, her dreams, her little quirks. Mr. Miller, the judge interrupted, you're appealing to sentimentality. No, Your Honor. I'm appealing to real justice, the kind that considers the whole person. Emma isn't an object to be fought over. She's a child who lost her mother and needs emotional stability. Jonathan took a deep breath before continuing. Your Honor, there are cases where the cold letter of the law isn't enough. There are moments when we must look beyond material circumstances and consider what truly matters for a child's healthy development. Go on, the judge said, his voice softer. Emma has found in her grandmother not just care, but the unconditional love every child deserves. A love that doesn't depend on work schedules, social obligations, or new relationships. A love that always puts the child first. During the speech, Jonathan noticed the judge fidgeting with a graduation ring, nervously twisting it on his finger. Your Honor, we were all children once. We all know the value of having someone fully dedicated to our well-being. Mrs. Wilson may not have a hefty bank account, but she has something far more valuable: time, dedication, and love. Mr. Miller, said the judge in a barely audible voice, are you finished? Almost, Your Honor. I'd just like to say that I hope justice is served not just based on financial matters, but by considering the child's true best interest. Emma needs someone who loves her, not just someone who can provide for her materially. The courthouse fell into absolute silence. The judge remained staring at the papers for several minutes, clearly moved. Mr. Edwards, your closing statement. The lawyer for Stephen Wilson stood up but seemed less confident than at the start of the trial. Your Honor, my client offers all the material conditions necessary for the child's proper development. Quality education, health insurance, extracurricular activities, things a retired woman simply can't provide. Mr. Edwards, the judge interrupted, during your arguments, you repeatedly mentioned financial conditions, but I'd like to know, How does your client plan to balance his professional responsibilities with the child's daily care? Mr. Edwards hesitated. It was a question he hadn't expected. My client has the means to hire the best support professionals. Support professionals, the judge repeated thoughtfully. And how much time per day does your client intend to personally spend with the child? Well, Mr. Wilson has a very busy schedule, but Mr. Edwards, I'm not interested in excuses. I want concrete numbers. Perhaps an hour a day on weekdays and a few hours on weekends. The judge jotted something down on his notepad. And in case the child falls ill, who will be responsible for her care? The nanny or perhaps my client, Mrs. Jennifer? Perhaps? The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Edwards, are you arguing for custody of a child based on perhaps? The tension in the room was palpable. Stephen Wilson whispered something to his lawyer, visibly nervous. Your Honor, my client offers financial stability, Mr. Edwards insisted. And Mrs. Wilson offers emotional stability, the judge countered. Which of the two do you consider more important for an 8-year-old child? It was then that Jonathan realized something had shifted in the judge's demeanor. The arrogant, prejudiced man from the early hearings had given way to someone more thoughtful and humane. I will declare a 2-hour recess to review the case files, the judge announced. The verdict will be read at 4 p.m. During the break, Mrs. Wilson remained silent on the hallway bench. Jonathan sat beside her, equally unsure of what to say. Mr. Miller, she finally spoke, no matter what happens, I want to thank you. You fought for us as if we were your own family. Mrs. Wilson, it's not over yet. I have a feeling things will work out. You know, Mr. Miller, I've been thinking, if I lose Emma today, at least I'll know I did everything I could. And if I win, I promise I'll give her everything within my power. At 4 p.m., everyone returned to the courtroom. The judge entered with a solemn expression, carrying a sheet of paper. Having reviewed all the evidence presented, the testimonies given, and the expert reports, I have reached the following conclusion. The judge began in a firm voice. Jonathan's heart pounded so loudly, he could hear it in his ears. Mrs. Wilson clasped her hands tightly, whispering a silent prayer. It is evident that the minor Emma Wilson shares deep emotional bonds with both parties. However, after careful consideration, I believe your best interest lies in remaining under the care of your maternal grandmother. A murmur of surprise swept through the courthouse. Stephen Wilson stood abruptly, restrained by his lawyer. This can't be happening, he shouted. That woman isn't fit to raise my daughter. Mr. Wilson, control yourself or you'll be removed from the room, warned the judge, banging the gavel. I acknowledge that Mrs. Margaret Wilson does not possess the same financial resources as the petitioner, the judge continued. However, it has been demonstrated that she offers something equally valuable: unwavering dedication, genuine affection, and emotional stability. Mrs. Wilson began to cry, covering her face with her hands. Jonathan placed a hand on her shoulder, equally moved. Furthermore, the judge went on, psychological evaluations have shown the child exhibits better emotional development when in her grandmother's care. Mr. Stephen Wilson will be granted bi-weekly visitation rights should he choose to exercise them. Your Honor, Mr. Edwards stood, I'd like to note our intention to appeal the decision. That is your right, the judge replied. However, I order the child to remain temporarily with Mrs. Wilson until the appeal is heard. When the session ended, Mrs. Wilson hugged Jonathan tightly. Mr. Miller, you've given me back my life. How can I ever thank you? Mrs. Wilson, seeing your happiness is the greatest reward I could ask for. Emma, who had been waiting in the adjoining room, ran into her grandmother's arms as soon as she heard the decision. Grandma Maggie, can I live with you forever now? Forever, my sweet girl. Forever. That evening, Jonathan received an unexpected call. It was Judge Stanley. Mr. Miller, could we speak privately tomorrow morning? Of course, Your Honor. Is something wrong? I'd just like to talk. Meet me at 9 in my chambers. The next morning, Jonathan arrived at the judge's chambers with some apprehension. The room was solemn, lined with shelves of legal books and framed diplomas. Mr. Miller, have a seat, the judge said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I'd like to ask you a personal question. Were you raised by your parents? The question caught Jonathan off guard. "No, Your Honor. My mother passed when I was 10 and my father couldn't raise me alone. I went to live with my maternal grandmother." The judge was silent for a few seconds. "And how was that experience?" "It was the best thing that ever happened to me, Your Honor. My grandma Eleanor gave me everything I needed: love, education, values. She sold sweets at the market to pay for my schooling. Never complained, never made me feel like a burden." "I see," said the judge, fidgeting with his graduation ring. "Mr. Miller, during the proceedings, you mentioned cases where love outweighs financial limitations. You spoke from experience." "Yes, Your Honor. I know what it means to be raised by a grandmother. I know the value of time, attention, and the wholehearted care they provide." The judge stood and walked to the window, gazing at the street below. "Mr. Miller, I need to confess something. When I was a boy, I also lost my parents very young. My paternal grandparents wanted to raise me, but the judge at the time decided I should stay with my maternal aunt and uncle." Jonathan remained silent, sensing this was a deeply personal moment for the magistrate. "My aunt and uncle raised me, true, but they never gave me love or attention. I grew up feeling like a nuisance, a weight in their lives. Perhaps that's why I developed such rigid views on cases involving grandparents." "Your Honor, you don't have to—" "I do," the judge interrupted. "All these years I've let my personal experience influence my decisions. How many children like Emma might have been harmed because of my prejudices?" The magistrate returned to his chair with a look of genuine remorse. "Mr. Miller, you've made me rethink many things. Last night, for the first time in decades, I called my paternal grandparents. They're still alive, quite elderly now, but still here." "And how was the conversation?" "Emotional. They never stopped loving me, even after all these years without contact. I'm visiting them next weekend." Jonathan smiled, realizing this case had transformed far more than just Emma and Mrs. Wilson's lives. "Your Honor, may I say you've made the fairest decision? Mr. Miller, for the first time in many years, I can say I judged with my heart, not just my mind, and strangely enough, it led to the fairest decision I could have made." 3 months later, Jonathan received an unexpected invitation: the vow renewal of Judge Stanley's grandparents, who had decided to celebrate their 60 years together with a family gathering. At the ceremony, held in a small country church, Jonathan saw a different man. Judge Stanley smiled genuinely, hugged his grandparents tenderly, and played with his great-grandchildren. The transformation was remarkable. "Mr. Miller," the judge said, approaching him during the celebration, "I'd like to thank you again. You gave me back my family. Your Honor, I only did my job." "No, Mr. Miller, you did far more than that. You reminded me of the true meaning of justice." During the party, Jonathan got a call from Mrs. Wilson. Emma had won a scholarship to a private school offered by the local community that had rallied to help the family. "Mr. Miller, Emma wants to talk to you," Mrs. Wilson said, handing over the phone. "Uncle John," the girl said cheerfully. "Grandma Maggie told me you helped us stay together forever. Thank you so much." "Emma, how are things there?" "Really good. Grandma taught me how to make chocolate cake, and I'm helping her in the garden. And guess what? Daddy visits me every Saturday, and he's being much nicer now." Indeed, Stephen Wilson had changed his stance after losing the case. Realizing he'd been focused only on material matters, he began dedicating more time to his daughter during visits. Jennifer, his wife, also made an effort to build a real bond with Emma. "And how's school?" "Great. My teacher said I'm one of the best in class. Grandma Maggie always helps me with homework, and she's really good at math." After speaking with Emma, Jonathan felt deep satisfaction. That case hadn't just changed his career, it had reshaped his perspective on what truly mattered in law. 6 months after the ruling, Jonathan opened his own practice, specializing in family law. His first client was a similar situation, a grandmother fighting for custody of her orphaned grandson. The firm grew quickly, not because of fees, which were always fair and adjusted to clients' means, but because of the dedication and humanity Jonathan brought to each case. Ms. Gladys became his official secretary, bringing her experience and wisdom to the new venture. Together, they created a welcoming space where families felt heard and understood. "Jonathan, my dear," Miss Gladys said one afternoon, "did you hear Judge Stanley retired?" "Really? He was still relatively young." "That's right. I heard he wants to focus more on family, travel with his grandparents, make up for lost time." Jonathan smiled, remembering the judge's transformation. "Ms. Gladys, I think we all learned something important from that case." "What's that, dear?" "That true justice isn't just in the codes and laws. It lies in the ability to look at others with compassion and understand what truly matters." A year after the trial, Jonathan received a special invitation, Emma's 9th birthday party. The celebration would be at Mrs. Wilson's house, in the backyard where grandmother and granddaughter had planted a garden together. The house was decorated with handmade, colorful banners. Emma, radiant, ran among the guests, neighbors, schoolmates, teachers, and even Stephen Wilson with Jennifer, who had become constant and loving presences in the girl's life. "Uncle John!" Emma shouted when she saw him arrive. "I'm so glad you came. Come see my garden." In the backyard, Jonathan saw a well-tended flower bed with blooms of every color. Emma proudly explained that each flower had a special meaning. "This red rose is for Mommy, who's in heaven," she said, pointing to a blooming rose bush. "And these white daisies are for Grandma Maggie because she's as pure as they are." "And this one?" Jonathan asked, pointing to a young sunflower. "That's for you, Uncle John. Grandma said sunflowers always seek the light, just like you did when you helped us find the right path." During the party, Jonathan observed the harmonious interaction among everyone present. Stephen Wilson played with Emma on the swing he had installed in the yard. Jennifer helped Mrs. Wilson serve the sweets. Judge Stanley arrived with his grandparents, who insisted on meeting the family that had changed their grandson's life. "Mrs. Wilson," the judge's grandfather said, holding her hands, "you did something very important. You showed my grandson that love is worth more than anything else. Mr. Thompson, I only did what any grandmother would do. I fought for my granddaughter, but you did it with dignity and courage, and in the end, you didn't just save your family, you saved ours too." That evening, as the party wound down, Jonathan helped Mrs. Wilson gather the plates and cups. "Mrs. Wilson, how do you feel today?" "Mr. Miller, I feel complete. Emma is growing up happy and healthy, surrounded by her family's love and doing well in school. What more could a grandmother want? And plans for the future. I'll keep caring for her with all the love I have. When she grows up and doesn't need me anymore, I'll know I've fulfilled my mission. You'll always be important in her life, Mrs. Wilson." "I hope so, Mr. Miller. I hope when she's a grown woman, she'll look back and remember our time together with love." Emma appeared in the kitchen, still wearing her pink party dress, but with her shoes already dirty from playing in the garden. "Grandma Maggie, can I sleep in your bed tonight?" "Of course, sweetheart, but first let's thank Uncle John for everything he's done for us." Emma ran to hug Jonathan, wrapping her small arms around him. "Uncle John, thank you so much for letting me stay with Grandma Maggie forever. You're my hero." Jonathan felt his eyes fill with tears. This was the most rewarding moment of his entire career. "Emma, you and your grandmother are the real heroes. You taught me that true love always finds a way to win." 2 years later, Jonathan received a special letter. It was from Emma, now 11, written in her careful, studious child's handwriting. "Dear Uncle John, I'm writing to share some news. I finished 5th grade with the best grades in my class. Grandma Maggie was so proud and made a special cake to celebrate. Daddy and Aunt Jennifer came for lunch last Sunday, and we planted more flowers in the garden. Now we even have tomatoes and bell peppers. Grandma says when I grow up, I'll cook just like her. Oh, and some really cool news. Judge Stanley, now I call him Grandpa Stanley because he asked, brought his grandparents to see our house. They're so sweet and told us stories from when they were young. Uncle John, I wanted to say that when I grow up, I want to be a lawyer just like you, to help other families like ours. Grandma Maggie said that if I study hard, I can achieve anything I want. Thank you so much for changing our lives. You'll always be special to us. With love, Emma P.S. Grandma Maggie sent a piece of her chocolate cake. She said you'd understand the message. Along with the letter was a small package with a slice of homemade cake and a note from Mrs. Wilson. Mr. Miller, This cake is made with the same love as always. Emma helped me prepare it, and she already knows almost the whole recipe by heart. Thank you for giving us the chance to build these memories together. With eternal gratitude, Margaret." Jonathan tucked the letter into a special folder, alongside other important documents from his career, but he knew that story would always be the most meaningful of all. 5 years passed. Emma was now 16, a determined and kind-hearted teenager. Inspired by the story she had lived, she chose to take a legal studies course. One Saturday afternoon, she showed up at Jonathan's office with Mrs. Wilson, who at 78 still had the same energy and clarity as ever. "Uncle John, I came to share some news," Emma said, beaming. "What news is that?" "I won a full scholarship to study law at State University. I'm going to follow in your footsteps." Jonathan hugged the young girl, moved. In her, he saw not just the child he'd helped years ago, but a future professional who would surely make a difference in others' lives. "Emma, I'm certain you'll be an exceptional lawyer. Grandma Maggie always says it was you who planted that seed in my mind," Emma said, looking fondly at her grandmother. "Actually," Jonathan replied, "it was the two of you who taught me the true meaning of fighting for what we believe in." Mrs. Wilson, who had been silently observing the conversation, finally spoke. "Mr. Miller, when this all began, I thought I was fighting only for Emma. Now I realize we were fighting for something much bigger, for the right to love and be loved, for the right to keep families together, for the right to believe justice can prevail." End of story. So, dear listener, what did you think of this touching story? Tell us in the comments if you've ever experienced a similar situation or know someone who has. Your opinion means a lot to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories. Thank you so much for joining us.